Hi guys, welcome to another episode on our series on moving over to GitHub. It's been a bit erratic really because there's a lot of stuff going on at the moment. Let's make sure we're recording first. Yeah, we are recording. So I'm going to try to recap where we are and then see if we can do some work on the nightlies because that's the main thing that's missing now. So this is the 7th video I think of this series. We've been slowly but surely moving along, trying to get all the bits and pieces. So since the last video we've managed to get all the builds running. However, there was a slight problem. So for whatever reason, we're not entirely sure why, but we are failing to build. I think it's Linux. No, Windows actually. Windows, MSVC, Clang. In fact, to be honest, this is a bit of a misnomer because where we say MSVC Clang, actually that's not correct. This is the LLVM version of Clang. And I think that's maybe one reason why this is failing to build. We're getting some weird link errors, I believe. Unfortunately, these builds take a long time to load. They're not very obvious what's going on, so you have to scroll a lot. So we're failing to link, and the link error is some weird boost archive error, which we don't get in any other build, so it's not very obvious. I think the problem is probably going to be something to do with the way that we are using. In fact, I'm not even sure that we are building with Clang for VC package. So perhaps the libraries are not being built correctly by Clang or something like that. But anyway, we spent a lot of time trying to figure out what's going on here, and we don't really have an infinite budget to get these builds going. Oh, we should really start clocking, I think. Not sure what we call this, but let's find the story roughly. I think we could clock against the nightly. That was probably, I don't know, 18 past maybe. So it's not obvious what's going on here, and we've already spent all the time we had allocated for this. We've already spent more than the time we had allocated for this. So the second option was to just mark these builds as experimental. Now that in itself was a whole story, because as it turns out, and I can show you in the commit list, as it turns out, we don't have a proper support for ignoring builds. So if I take one of these commits, this guy here, what we figured out is that actually GitHub Actions don't support allow failures properly. There's a whole Jira or there's a whole ticket going on here since 2020, and no one seems to have done anything about it. The discussion is long. I think that they will probably add this support at some point, but it doesn't seem that's going to happen very quickly. So what we did is we just made an explanation for our use case, why it is that's so important to allow failures, and I can just discuss that very briefly. So my comments that I made here is, the gist of it is this. In the past, when we had Travis and when we had AppVeyor, we never really had all the builds green all the time. We always had some build that was more or less experimental, whether it was Clang CL or whether it was MSVC, or there was always something not quite right. And what we used to do in Travis that was very useful is whenever a build was not quite ready, we just mark that as allow failures. And that would mean that Travis would still mark the whole run as successful, even though the builds had failed. And what we do is we just have some stories in the backlog every sprint to say, can we improve this build slightly? Can we just do something to make it get a little bit better? And every sprint we would just tidy things up slightly. And at some point we got the builds to go green over a very long period of time. And then we'd look into the warnings, and again same thing, we either find ways of taking the warnings away or whatever it was. Every sprint we do some incremental work. Now what's C- allows you to do is you can also mark a build as experimental. There will be another section that will come up here. Might even have that. I think we might have made use that in the recent past. See if I can find one. May have deleted it. But the gist of it is also that we there's a little section here somewhere in C dash where the experimental builds go, and in that section a failure doesn't affect you. I think we've already gone past it because we are quite aggressive in deleting old builds these days. And so it's not just a nice thing to have, it's actually a vital thing to have when you're doing development like we are, because we don't have infinite time. So if I've got a quick sprint and I got an half an hour here or 20 minutes there or a short period of time, it's really useful to be able to just improve the build slightly. And it's also really useful to have continuous feedback on the build, because what we used to do is we used to check all the time that the build didn't get any worse. Maybe not every commit, but every other commit. We just have a quick look to see where we are with the builds that were failing. And interestingly enough, sometimes, like for example when we migrated VC package versions, sometimes the build would go green, because the problem that was causing the failure just went away with the updates on VC package. And now with the setup that they have in GitHub Actions, it's not possible to do any of that, because if I add the Clang build to my set of builds, the entire commit gets marked as failed. So you can see as an example all of the X's you see here. This is not like every build that failed, just that the experimental builds failed. And now I have to go through each of these X's to double check if the failure was an expected failure or if it was another failure, which is very painful. And so the only alternative to this, which is what we ended up doing in the end, is to actually completely remove the build from the GitHub workflow. And so that's what we did. We completely removed Clang from the workflow, which now means that if things get worse or if things get better, either way, we won't be able to tell until we go through adding the build here, rerunning it, seeing where we are, and so on, which is really, really not ideal. In fact, I just realized the camera is on the other monitor, so you probably can't see me, but this is really not ideal. So we complained about it and explained the use case and so on. Hopefully this will be, at some point, this feature will be available. I think there's just too many use cases for them to ignore it. But so that was that really. We kind of finished things up there. So the current state at the moment is that all the builds and all tests are running, except those builds that we had to remove. We've also got everything coming to C dash, and there's only a minor little warning on OS X. I'm pretty sure we had this before. In fact, we can probably have a quick look at what does the backlog say. Let's have a quick look. I'll just do a quick grab. No, I don't seem to have any of that, but I'm pretty sure that we had some kind of similar error before. But again, we're not going to spend time with this. It's fine to have a warning. We will have to look into that later. So, the current state then is that all the workflows have been created. I'll give you a quick tour of the workflows. They're very, very simple, really. We've basically got builds in both commits or pushes, I guess, to master and any pull requests. For Linux, we've got GCC and Clang, debug and release. And then we have got a fairly simple set of steps: checkout, get Clang, set up Ccache, set up CMake, set up VC package, and then set up all the test data with a little script we created. And finally, just run the ctest workflow. It makes use of the presets, as we discussed before, which is quite a convenient thing, new feature. And finally, for Linux, we test the package to make sure that it installs and just does some basic sanity checks. And when the build's finished, we upload the artifact over to the workflow. And all the workflows are very, very similar in that sense. So what should happen now is when you have a workflow run, if I just go to actions, say if I take Windows for example, you should see here somewhere artifacts. Hopefully this is not downloading the artifact, I just wanted to see it. I don't think there's an option to actually just see the artifacts. Oh, okay, here we are. Sorry, I'm going a bit blind. So as you can see here, these are this is still not perfect, but these are zipped files that contain the release. So if you download this thing, I mean, I'll just download this one as an example. This thing contains the MSI. Why it does a zip, I'm not sure. It should detect as a single file and not bother, but it does a zip. To be fair, it does seem to compress a little bit. So now we know that there's still problems with the package that are coming out of Windows. The ones from Linux are fine, but the Windows ones are still a little bit not quite right. So that's another story in our backlog. But that's fine. We will just continue to test that incrementally. As you can see here, for whatever reason, our debug build on OS X is still very large, as is the release as well, actually. But it is generating the image, and similarly on Linux, as you can see. I think this is probably the fact that we're including the boost libraries on Linux, but we're not including it on Windows. That's the difference, really. Good to see that Clang generates slightly smaller code, but there you go. So I think in the sense of moving to GitHub, which is the topic of our series of videos, I think we've more or less achieved that. That's looking quite good. What we haven't done yet is we haven't got the nightly builds to work yet. The main problem with the nightly builds was, if we have a quick look at the presets, what we did with the presets was we fixed the location of the test data files, and the idea being that, well, I'm the main developer of Dogen. I don't particularly care about the use cases of other people for now, so I allowed myself to have a strange directory structure, because given the main use case, which is the directory structure I use at present, and that basically means that I normally have a top level directory, and then on that top level directory, say for example Dogen, I have checkouts of branches, so for example master or some other branch, and due to the magic of Git work trees, we normally have like 2 or 3 branches depending on what we're working on. That then means that in order to find this test data, because everything should really be relative to the current checkout, the test data will be well, the branch directory up, the product directory up, so this will be Dogen, and then you get into another product, for example Frozen, and then similarly you would have a branch directory there, and then the projects. And so this is not a very ideal setup, because I'm now forcing the whole world to have this structure in order to be able to do things the way I'm doing, which is really not ideal. However, it has worked so far, and as you can see, we managed to get all of the GitHub stuff working, so I wasn't too worried about it. Where things break down slightly is that the nightly build doesn't really work this way. The nightly build we just had a checkout. It was a flat directory, which you can see very quickly here. It was just a flat directory, and then in the directory we had the products, and the references are obviously all wrong now. So that's the first problem. The second problem was that we had 2 Dogen checkouts. We had the Dogen checkout for pristine, which is basically Dogen as it normally is used, and we had a second checkout, which was Dogen after we ran our little special flag. The special flag generates code for all facets. So that basically means that it won't just generate code for the facets that Dogen's using, it will generate codes for all supported facets. And we do this on the nightly because what it does is it enables us to run things like leak detection and performance and all sorts of things across all of the features in Dogen, which is a good thing because we may not necessarily use all features in Dogen. So if you can test that, that'll be really nice. However, we now have a problem, and the problem, well, the first problem is obvious, the directory structure doesn't match that, so this doesn't work. So we first considered making the directory structure match that, which is not that complicated, it's easy enough. We can just put the source data in such a structure like this. It would not be very nice, not very elegant, but it would work. But the second problem, which is slightly more worrying, is that we expect the Dogen projects directory to be where we're building. And as I demonstrated a second ago, this is the thing we're going to be running the Dogen nightly tests against, but this is the thing that contains the projects. Just to be clear why this is a problem. We can't test the generation of code against the full generation, because for the typical Dogen use case we only generate a subset of the facets. We don't really want the whole of Dogen to carry the whole of the facets. This is something that we bumped into in the past. We were just generating too much code, the builds were taking too long, and a lot of the code was not being used, so it's just not a good idea. But for testing purposes, of course, it is a good idea, because you want to generate as much code as possible across every single feature of Dogen, and then you want to see whether the code is compiling correctly, and if possible you want to run tests against it. You just don't want that for the regular use case of Dogen. So what we thought about doing then is we thought we needed some kind of way, some kind of hack really, to enable us to do these two different scenarios. And as usual here, we don't worry too much about making it really nice. We just want something that works for now. We'll worry about making it nice later. So the idea at present is that we are creating a new set of presets, and these presets will be designed explicitly for the nightly. In the future, presumably, what we're probably going to end up having is we're going to end up having 3 different kinds of environments. Sort of a flat environment for the typical use case, normal users. This crazy directory structure, which is our one, and then the one for nightlies. Nightlies can't just use the flat environment, because the nightly case is where we need 2 different Dogen directories, so it's almost the same as the flat environment, but not quite. So we would always need at least 2, probably 3 of these guys. Now, the problem is, in order to do that, we now need to change the structure of the presets, I think. That is because in the past, we put the Dogen environment quite further down, or quite further up in the tree of relationships between presets, because it was kind of common to everybody. Now it's the opposite. So I think I've probably already done most of the changes. Let's have a quick look. Let's put this in English keyboard. Yeah, so as you can see here, the top level Dogen common options, we used to have the environment there, which is this guy there. We removed that from there, and removed that from all the top level guys. And now what we did was we added these guys to the bottom of the tree, the guys that are actually doing the build, which would then allow us to then just add a couple of nightly specific ones, which hopefully we'll see here somewhere. Oh, here we go. So here, hopefully we'll see the nightly guy, and then there should be a similar one for Clang, presumably. Yeah, here we go. So this gives us the 2 nightly specific builds, and now we can call these presets, and hopefully that would work. So all we need to do here is to make sure that we're still building. Seems like we are. Let's just do a quick release build. This is just a quick test. Oh, if I could spell. Right, so this is just a quick test to make sure that our build for the regular case, the common path, is working. So what we'll do here is well, this is going to take a little while, but the good thing is it seems like it's building, so I think we didn't break anything. Right, so then our job then is to plug this stuff into the nightly builds, change the presets in the nightly builds. So if I go back to nightly, we probably have some scripts here, and we probably have a preset here. Right, so there's a preset there. So when we now need to point to the nightly preset. And of course, because we're building Dogen in two different places, this is actually quite interesting. We're building Dogen in two different places, so before we go any further, actually, let's just make sure that we're not building C++. Yeah, we are actually. So this is C++ ref implementation. I don't think we let's just have a quick look at what's going on here. Because the nightly build is the nightly build for everybody, not just for the Dogen codebase. It's also for the reference implementation. I think that's failing at present as well. It is indeed. In fact, we haven't built it for a month. I think what we're going to do is we're just going to comment out these guys here. I don't think that's going to make any anything sensible. So let's just ignore that. And then, if we look at presets, we just need to make sure we got the right name for the preset, whatever it is that we called it. So we put nightly at the very end. Not entirely sure this is going to work, but we just go up to the nightly and right. So we call that preset there. As you can see here, we're doing the build of the Dogen itself. This is the pristine Dogen, presumably. And then we will build actual Dogen. This is the flag I mentioned before. Actually, slight problem here. This is going to fail. Right, okay, so there's another problem. And the second problem is going to be that ctest is using this preset flag, which is also needs to be updated. Right, so we're going to have a lot of problems here. The first problem is going to be that we don't have a way to hook in this Dogen full generation, to my knowledge. Maybe I'm lying. Let's see if I'm lying. So if I just go up to CMake, let's see what CMake says. I do not think that we capture the environment in here, but don't let me be wrong. Oh yes, as you can see, we're not actually capturing the environment here. Right, so we just have to retrace ourselves steps slightly. Let's just think, what did we used to do in our build script? That's the test package. Right, as you can see here, the build script got deleted, so the quick thing to do, I mean, we could use my Git, but sometimes I'm a bit lazy. It's easier to just have a quick look here. And presumably this cleanup was when we deleted some scripts. Yeah, it looks about right. So if I just go up to the commit before and browse the files, hopefully we'll see the scripts here. And okay, I think we deleted it earlier than that. So just to avoid spending too much time on this, let's just scroll down a bit, browse the files. I should really learn how to do this properly in my Git. It's probably quite easy. So build Linux, this is the thing we're looking for, and here we go. Right, as you can see here, we look for this environment variable, and if it's defined, we define this CMake variable. So now that we don't have the shell script, we need to go straight into that. So if I go up to the nightly build, very interesting. We have no way to pass that to the CMake script. Okay, fine, no worries. So what we do instead is we will look at what ctest. So ctest is going to be calling CMake, and because ctest has a a workflow just for nightlies, we can add this there without too much worry. Yeah, here we go. So this is the nightly bit, and so what we need to do here is there must be something like flags to pass to CMake. Yes, there we are. CMake args. So presumably we need to somehow say if we are doing a nightly. This needs to be tidied up, of course, but for now, if we're doing a nightly, can you please add something extra to the CMake? Right, so now that will enable us to do full generation. And I think that might be it. Let's have a look at our diffs. Excuse me, let's have a look at our diffs. So we're confident with our presets because we managed to do all the builds. Just run all tests. Okay, tests are not green. Let's have a look at the diff again. We are working on a model somehow. Let's just I don't really remember this work was, so I forgot to stash just the index. Right, so let's make sure the tests are green, because we should really not be committing unless the tests are green. We did an update to Emacs. Our Emacs is a bit temperamental at present. Might have to go back to Emacs 28 actually. Okay, so that looks good. To 27, I think. Right, so presets are there. CTest's got the nightly. Some agile stuff. Right, so what we'll do is we will just commit these two guys first. CMake, CTest, fixes for... No, we should probably add presets for... In fact, to be honest, sorry, I don't really like... I'm a bit peculiar with my commits. I don't really like too many things in a commit. I like the commit to be just related to one topic. So for example, in this case, we have a CMake commit. And that's why we end up with so many commits in Dogen, is because I really don't like committing too many things. It's just that if you don't have a lot of time and you need to review a green build, a red build, it's nice when you open up the commits and the commit just, it's got the smallest number of files and it connects to the description. So that for example, I could quite quickly say, well, this only touches text files, this only touches text files, this only touches CMake files, and so on, which enables me to review commits very, very quickly. If I start mixing and matching, then it's much harder to do that. So in here, what we want to do is we want to say add presets for nightlies. And in this one, we would like to say CTest add full generation flag for nightlies. And finally, we will just, since we're here, we might as well clock and call this agile backlog refinement. Righty, so now we have a batch of commits that we can push. Let's just open up our clock again. We should really keep an eye on how far we are from the end of the sprint, so 62 hours. We normally finish the sprint at 80 hours, so not long now to go. What we're going to do then is we're going to push this. We have to push it because in order to git checkout from the nightly build, we need to make sure it's in GitHub. So let's just merge integration, push. We might as well update all of our mirrors. As you can see, they're getting slightly out of sync there. Right, so this will now kick the GitHub workflows. We just want to double check that the GitHub workflows are not broken with any of these changes. So that's going to go and do its thing. but we can proceed with the nightly. Let's see how long we've been recording for. 30 minutes, so another 20 or so minutes. Let's not make the video too long. So what we need to do then is we need to run the nightly script. For that we need a bash shell, so I'll just open up a regular shell. Let's rename that to something like shell nightly. And in here we got our cron script. Not sure what the crap. Oh. Not sure. Oh, this is probably some legacy stuff we had, so we don't really need this anymore because it will all be related to the systems we don't use anymore. Right, so in cron we need to figure out what is this script doing. Right, so in fact, I wonder what this API token is all about. We shouldn't probably be showing this stuff in videos as well, but I don't think we are using this API token anymore. In fact, why would you even need an API token? The only reason for an API token is if we need to upload stuff from the nightly anywhere, and I don't think we do that. So yeah, as you can see, that file was on the 30th of January, so that's definitely something we've probably needed in the past, but we never really used it. So I think it's fine. Saves me from having to delete this video and start again. I don't think that the API key is important at all. So we will go for cron, and we will just run this guy and see what's happening here. Okay. Right, so as you can see, this is very broken at the moment. Start from the beginning. Fast forwards. Not possible to fast forward. So we need a bit of echoes here because we don't really know what this thing's doing. So let's just say something like echo. So if we just do is that the first one? Yeah, it is. Just to get some sense of where we are. So at least we know where the errors are coming from. So that's all the pristine stuff. Then we build pristine, and then we should say Dogen proper, and then we just say something like interesting, we're exporting code coverage. Don't think we need to do that anymore. In fact, I'm pretty sure that's not going to do anything, so let's just get rid of it. Dogen GCC, and then Dogen Clang. Right, so now let's try to see if the interesting thing as well here is we seem to be looking for a logs directory, so there should have been a logs directory here, which there is. Not obvious why that would fail, so logs dir, okay, that looks fine. Who's using this logs dir? Yeah, that looks fine as well. Okay, I'm not sure why that error is coming up, so let's just try running this again, see if we can at least know where we are. Right, so the first error we're having is with C++ ref impl. Not entirely sure why that would be. Let's try to manually update some of these guys. So C++ ref info, git status. That looks fine. So we're just doing a git pull origin master. Right, so somehow we seem to have a problem fast forwarding. I'm not going to spend too much time understanding what's going on here. I'm just going to rm on as rf this guy, because I don't think that's a problem. This should just do a new fresh checkout, I think. So let's just try to see if we can solve that one problem. I like to confuse one thing at a time, really. So if we could get one problem out of the way, it's one less thing to worry about. Right, so that just did a fresh checkout. So that solved the first problem. And again, we probably will be doing a fresh checkout for Dogen every time, so that's fine too. Which leaves us with the problem of the logs. Okay, so that solved the problem at hand. Now let's go to the next problem, which is, why is it that when we try to execute something to the redirect to logs, we have an issue? So this guy here is basically saying line 90, redirect the logs there. That looks perfectly fine to me. So what happens if I do an ls of that file? Yep, it's there. Read write, so I should be able to write to it. Not quite obvious why you're not able to write to that file. I don't think we changed a lot in this script, so I wonder if the problem is that the current directory that we're in, yeah, I think what's happening here is that some step is failing here. And this, let's just double check that. Yes, so for example here we cd to builds, we cd into build. Alright, so I think the problem is some of these variables are not quite right, isn't it? We're probably miles away from where we're supposed to be. So let's just try to understand what these variables mean. Builds is in the workspace, workspace is in the home nightly, and I think if I just do a pwd, yeah, as you can see here, somehow we started trying to create this notion of builds, but I don't think we went through it properly. I think we just need a workspace. I don't think we need builds at all. So what we'll do is we'll get rid of builds, and then we'll say that the git there is in the workspace, and that will hopefully fix most of our problems. Okay, I think that will help. We probably should do a pwd after every step, but it's fine. Right, so as usual we have to reclone Dogen. To be absolutely honest, good, excellent. So things have improved. Okay, so now let's try to understand why it is that we've got no presets. Interestingly enough, yeah, Dogen pristine, that's good. So interestingly enough, we don't seem to have that preset. Before anything else, if I was to go into the Dogen directory, and if I was to grep for a nightly maybe, on CMake presets perhaps. Right, as you can see here, we definitely have some kind of preset. just does not match that name. So let's look at the diff. Linux Clang release nightly. Ah, okay. Right, so the problem is we are trying to do release builds. We expected the nightly to be debug builds. Okay, cool, no worries. Now, why is it that we're doing so many release builds? We should do maybe one release build perhaps, but not that many. Yeah, I assume this is wrong. We should have read debug. So let's just take away a few of these things. Let's just basically say the preset is this guy here, and we configure, and then we build, and then we reset the preset, and I think this will be fine. Okay, now the second problem is we are building the pristine as we don't need that either. So we're building the pristine as release, as you can see here, and there is no such thing as release. So what we need to then do is to say, go back to the presets in our CMake area and look for the nightly builds. So forgot the compiler. Presumably it's GCC, so CMake. Right, so let's just look for the GCC debug build, and let's just make a copy of it with release. Cool. Now we got all the settings. I think we probably should put capitals for GCC, to be honest. On the comments. Maybe I'm just being a little bit whatchamacallit, OCD here, but also notice that debug and release is capitalized properly for all the builds except for the Linux ones. See, these are the sort of things that drive OCD people crazy, is that we don't really handle inconsistencies very well, and then we can spend hours on end just dealing with inconsistencies instead of doing real work. But there you go. Right, so hopefully. Right, so what should happen now is that we should now have the builds that we're missing again. We have to do a commit and a push. Seems like Bitbucket is misbehaving, but there you go. So if I just say something like CMake adds preset for release, for nightly release build, which is what that guy does, merge and push, and let's just make sure that Bitbucket yes, Bitbucket seems to be there. Not sure why I didn't update a second ago. Right, so now then, if we go back to nightlies, all we need to do here is to run the script and ensure the build kicks in. Now it's not going to be the end of the story, as you can imagine, because oh, there you go. Very interesting. In fact, none of the presets are being found. Right, so let's repeat the exercise. So grep for this on Dogen, CMake presets. It's definitely there. I think we may have marked these as hidden, and I didn't think that it meant you couldn't access them, but clearly it does. In fact, let's just do a quick test before we have to do a commit and a push. The test will be to go to this file, we just have to be clear what we're doing here, because we may get into trouble in a second. So there's too many versions of files going on. So this is just presets. So the preset is definitely here. So if I just say that hidden false, and let's just remember that we did that locally. And now if I just say it's a bit annoying having to reclone everything and so on, right? So how do we speed things up here? If we say don't bother RMing, yeah, don't bother RMing anything. Okay, so with that different errors, but I think it's just a muckdeer. We must have a muckdeer somewhere. Oh no, interesting. That's probably Git. Actually, Git is probably moaning that it already exists. Excellent. So what's happening now is that we seem to be looking for a toolchain file and scripts. So why would we be looking at a toolchain file and the scripts? Yes, okay, so the problem here is when we do the git clones, so I'm actually going to take back what I just said a second ago. Let's just get rid of these. So when we do a git clone, we must ensure, this is going to be quite annoying, but there's no other way. So when we do a git clone, we need to ensure that we rebuild VC package. So really, the rebuilding, this is actually quite annoying, the rebuilding of the Dogen pristine directory and the rebuilding of the Dogen directory is going to result in a complete recompilation of VC package, because we store VC package somewhere in those directories, I believe. So anyway, one problem at a time. So the first problem we need to solve is we need to make sure that the checkout, there's the submodules. Okay, so this just basically does that, which it does it for us. We just need to find the right git incantation for the submodules, which is this guy. Now this is really not ideal, but we'll just persevere for the moment. So if I git clone depth minus recurse submodules, and sadly we need to do that twice because we are doing two different git checkouts, so it's going to be another one. Not sure, I can't see it, but right, let's have a look at the git clone. So for these guys, for now it doesn't matter. So this guy, we go to the workspace, we do git clone, and then perhaps what we do is we do a copy. Yeah, we do a copy. Okay, that's fine. So at least we only have to build VC package once. Right, so that's all good. Let's just make all these presets visible and commit that, because we now know that's the problem. And let's also make sure we got the right presets file. Okay, so if I just look for nightly, I guess, And in all of these guys, let's just say, need to quick that. If we just say, let's just make sure all of these are set to true, to false, sorry. Now, quick check. And you got 3 of these, and they look like the nightly ones, so that looks great. So CMake set do not hide nightly build in presets. Good, so that solves the immediate problem. I mean, we are of course going to create a lot of workflows here for no reason, so probably should be good GitHub citizens and cancel a few of these. One thing that's annoying about these cancellations is that it doesn't seem to update very quickly, the status. So you end up not knowing what you've cancelled. Let's hope that this resulted in some cancellations. Anyway, we'll just leave that for a second. Now, we have no other option other than rebuild VC package, because in fact, is that even true? So the pristine directory is actually pristine, so it will always be. I think we can make a slight optimization here. We don't need to always delete the pristine directory. We need to delete the Dogen directory, because we do faffing, we faff around with that directory in terms of code generation. So I think that makes sense. We don't really want to keep the state there. But with the pristine directory, we get a pristine checkout and we do a build that doesn't do anything special. I suspect, I'm going to gamble here, I suspect it's fine to delete the product directory, but let's not delete the pristine directory. Let's instead, so here we're saying if the directory already exists, what we really need is something like if the directory does not exist, do this stuff. So something along the lines of always go to the workspace directory, check for the existence of the directory, but we don't want the -d, we want the opposite of it, which is bash not exists. I'm sure we'll have a very simple example here, probably just have to do a bang or something like that. Yes, so it's just a bang. So if I just say if not pristine directory, git clone, but don't delete it, and then at the end, because we've done the deletion of the Dogen directory, copy the pristine to the new directory. Now go into the git there, which is very badly named because it's actually the git directory for the pristine there, and then do the builds, then that just generates whatever it does. Now the interesting thing about this is, yeah, we probably don't really want to generate a nightly here. Well, we got ourselves in a bit of a twist here really, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to build a plain GCC Dogen, and then what we do with that plain Dogen is we're trying to then regenerate all files, and then we add all of them and we commit them on the new git directory, right, which is this guy here. So the logic then is really should probably do is we should probably build in the pristine directory, copy it to the non-pristine directory, and then generate in the non-pristine directory. Because if we do that, that would mean that VC package would always be whatever it was last night, and we wouldn't have to rebuild the entire cache of VC package every time we do a nightly, which is really horrendously expensive. So, of course, if we do that, then I suspect this is going to complain so let's just try to figure out what we do. So let's go to the top level directory. If the pristine directory doesn't exist, do the git clone. Then we do a copy of that git clone. Let's just wait a second before we do a copy. And then what we want to do is we want to say go into the pristine directory and then we'd like to make a build. Now I don't think it matters whether we do a nightly build or not. We just need a code generator, right? In the past it wasn't too important. We could just get the pristine directory and then we would take the results of the pristine directory. We would do a checkout, copy that checkout to from the pristine directory to the non-pristine directory, and then we do everything from the non-pristine directory and it'll be fine. However, if we do that, that means we're going to rebuild the VC package cache every day. So we don't want to do that. So what we want to do is we want to go to the pristine directory, we want to do a build in the pristine directory, and then we would like that build to contain the CLI, which is fine, and then we can make a copy over this copy seems to be the opposite way around though, doesn't it? Because the git directory is Dogen, presumably. So one would have thought we should be copying the pristine directory over to the Dogen directory. So right, let's just make these names slightly more understandable because I have no idea what these things do. So the product is Dogen, the URL, the git dir, this all looks good. The git dir, so let's just call this Dogen git dir. And that's basically the thing we're going to be running all the tests on. So we're happy with that. So if that doesn't exist, if that exists, we'd like to remove it, which is correct. We don't really want to keep this directory because we're going to faff with it. Right, so now we're going to handle the pristine problem. So first we go into the workspace, we go to the pristine directory, which is the Dogen pristine directory really. If that does not exist, the first time we ran this, we would like to clone with recurse. Good. If that already exists, presumably we will do a git update from the CMake file. Let's just double check that. If I open up the ctests.cmake, I expect to see something like git interesting. So what we're doing here is we are saying update version only. Okay, fine. So this is not going to do a git update. That's not a problem. We just need to else, and then here we say cd annoyingly we'd have to cd into the pristine dir and do a git where is it? Git update, git pull origin master. Right, so either way. Right, so this means we end up with Dogen latest here. Then annoyingly we do another cd again. That's not avoidable. I mean, we could probably always just do a git pull, but whatever. So go to the pristine directory, then we would like to do a config and build of CLI. The only reason why we do this is because this is going to trigger the VC package rebuild. So if it's the first time, it will trigger the VC package rebuild. If it's the second time, it's already done, so it's not going to do anything special. And it will leave us with the CLI. Then we take whatever it is in that pristine directory, the whole lot, and we copy that over to the Dogen Git directory. And that then means we're now going to do the actual build. Now, I don't think we need any of this stuff, I don't think. So now what we really need is copy and go into that directory. Then build with GAU. Now this is just going to generate, because we've already done the CLI, it's going to generate a whole lot of code. Then we're going to commit that code. And then we're going to say, okay, now we're actually in the state where we can run the tests. Okay, cool. This looks vaguely correct. Let's see what this guy says. Right, so not quite right. Okay, good. So I think what's happening now is it is attempting to build, but it is failing to find due to the presets. Interesting. It doesn't seem to find. It's definitely there. And it's definitely not hidden. So why would this fail? Well, at this point in time we have sufficient confidence in the process that we can just start running commands by hand. So we can just do something like cd.dogen, go into here, and then run. Okay, good. So now what we can see here is okay, that doesn't look too bad. In fact, that looks quite correct. Not entirely sure why it's running. C++. Did we do something silly? Did we delete? Yes, okay. I may have deleted something. Okay, right, so I think I've done two things simultaneously. I commented out no, that's just here. So what happened to the C++ ref impl? It's not obvious to me why. Let's just have a look at these RMs minus RFs. Slight problem is when we make mistakes with these variables. We start deleting all sorts of random stuff. That's why it's not good to run these things as your own user, because if you suddenly do a /home rm minus rf, bad things will happen. Yes, so as you can see here, this is probably not ideal. Really not ideal. Luckily nothing bad happened there. Right, so for whatever reason we seem not to be checking out the ref impl. That's our main problem at present. Let's see how much we got for time. Oh, we've already gone past an hour. Okay, right, anyway, you can see the gist of what we're doing right now. What we need to figure out basically is why we can't find the ref impl. It's going to be something really trivial. I'm sure the git clone somehow is failing. Maybe solve that problem before we finish the video. So URL git there, the product. So that all looks sensible. If the git there does not exist, clone cd git there. Yeah, that looks perfectly fine to me. So let's look at this log file again, because I would expect to see, as you can see here, we're definitely checking it out. So there's only two possibilities here. We either RMing -rf, the ref impl afterwards, or we're checking out to the wrong place, and that builds directory already means something is not right. So let's just double check to make sure we're not actually doing something really stupid. So C++ ref impl, git URL is correct, workspace product, we don't need that variable anymore, so let's just get rid of all of these. They come from the presets now, and if the git there and do the git clone cd git current updates, that looks fine. Let's just write the pwd in exits here. Right, so very interestingly we seem to, that's very strange. Why would you not do this a second ago? I have no idea. Oh, maybe it's because we didn't run the full script. Let's just run the full script once just to see what happens. Right, so C++ ref impl, frozen, C++, C#, C++, Dogen pristine, already up to date. Good, excellent. And then finally, something on the git clone. Ah, okay, so now, second problem. We need to rm -rf Dogen. The reason being that the first time we did the clone, we did it without submodules. So we need to redo it again with, oh! Ah, mistake. What we really meant was Dogen pristine. Right, hopefully this will bootstrap now. Okay. Okay, this is surprising. I would have thought this would result in a clone. So just leave a log here. Now what do we think happened here? Let's again, as usual, just a quick exit just so we don't have to wait for. Oh, to be honest, it doesn't really matter. But yeah, we know there's gonna be an error, so there's no point to continue. Okay, so that's fine. Ah, do you know what's happening here? Something really very silly. This is what happens when you start messing around with variable names. We were using consistently git there everywhere, and then I started trying to modify this. Right, so let's start again then. So let's just use git there because that's what we're using everywhere else. That I think will do the right thing now. Okay, good. So now that's checking out. The key thing about this is we want to see VC package being checked out as well. Good. So I see the submodules kicking in. That's great. So, okay, this is probably a good point for us to end this video then. So, at this point in time, we now are able to check out Dogen itself. Presumably, this would then mean that the error that we're having, an inability to find the VC package toolset, will now no longer be a problem because VC package will be checked out. Ah, okay. Right, that's interesting because we made a mistake here somewhere. We really did not meant to call this the git dir. We meant to call this the pristine dir. Right. In fact, I don't even think we need to RM anything. We can just run. Right, so let's try again. Hopefully this will do the right thing. I think there's some noise coming up, so I'll just pause it for a second. Right, so we'll just do a quick conclusion for this. So what's happening at the moment basically is that we were pointing to the right directory, to the wrong directory, which was Dogen instead of the Dogen pristine. This will now hopefully resolve that problem. We will then start building. As you can see already, Dogen CLI log has been updated. So if I just do a dogen.cli log, you can see VC package is now starting to bootstrap. So we're not far off now. With this, we should, in theory, build our phase 1 of the code generator. Then we use the code generator to generate the code generator across all facets, and then we start the nightly properly. So I think we're almost there really. And this is going to take quite a long time now because the bootstrapping of VC package takes a while. So I think it's a good time to finish the video, and then I'll just do a quick summary video to just do a status update of where we are in terms of the build. But I think with this we're probably almost there. Okay, thanks for watching.